Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary. Well, it's Valentine's Day, and I'd figured what better way than to celebrate by creating an abomination inspired by the game Honey Pop Double Date and a horror movie called Audition. Let me explain. So the whole gimmick of Honey Pop Double Date is to romance two partners at the same time. This requires balancing everything from time, attention, and gifts between two parties for 99% of the time. It's actually pretty challenging, and it got me thinking, what if this game had a horror element to it? Specifically, without spoiling Audition, which by the way I would totally recommend, what if there was a character with other means than romance? For example, what a knife would look like in your back as you scream in agony. You know, that kind of stuff. Anyway, so that's the idea. The player is a go-digger looking for their next score, but the twist is that one of their targets is not like the others, which from now on we will refer to as simply the danger. So this project is comprised of just two items, a script holding the enum data and our main controller object. The enums are simply there to make things less confusing. As for the controller object, oh boy, where do we even begin? Our button system makes yet another appearance, and a quick look at our list of variables covers the game in a nutshell. We have arrays holding data for the end results for each run, and player-based variables for the different actions they can take. And the baddie variable determines who the secret danger is. The game first loads our four romantic targets, giving them full happiness, a random amount of affection, and full energy. They're also assigned random values that determine their drain for each attribute, and these are what the player will be balancing. Then the buttons for our 5 actions are added to the game. Now this is a single screen interface style game, so the left click is our main controller here, and the events are based on location plus the use of our button system. So menu-wise, the player can do one of 5 things: talk to someone, date someone, give someone a gift, work, and rest. Clicking on the menu cues these actions, and choosing to work will provide the player with some in-game cash, at the cost of all romantic targets losing points in happiness and affection, with stamina being a coin flip. The player also loses stamina, and at 0 stamina, the player can't do anything other than rest. The rest option fills a random amount of the player's stamina, with romantic targets again losing points in happiness and affection, albeit less, and guaranteed addition back to their stamina attribute. The function that controls these attribute changes is pretty simple. Based on the type, with 0 being subtract and 1 being add, the function will alter the target's attribute based on the arguments provided. The values are then clamped and checked using our status check function, which I'll cover later. Back to our menu, the talk, date, and gift actions are broken down into switch cases, mostly so each choice could be given specific values to subtract or add to each attribute. And each action has their own pros and cons. Talking guarantees happiness but not affection, and costs very little stamina for both target and player. Dates guarantee happiness and affection, and cost a bit more stamina for both the target and the player. The player must also have at least 20 money to go on a date. Now, gifts guarantee a significant amount of happiness and affection at the cost of no stamina for either target or player. However, the player requires 50 money to do this action. And finally, regardless of the action, the other targets will have their attributes lowered. The queue is then reset after making one last status check. Starting with the first check, if the danger's affection hits 100, they will make one of 2 choices. Either they will accept the player's affection or, you know, the knife thing. In other words, romancing the danger will always end up in a coin flip and is indeed a matter of life and not life. But if that hasn't happened, the check continues. If the danger's affection level hits 0, they will do one of 3 things. They will either knife themselves, they will knife the player, or they will simply leave. Additionally, as long as the danger has not knifed themselves, they will compare their affection level with the others. And if there's at least a 25% difference, the danger may knife their competition. And the status check keeps going. If the non-dangerous targets lose all of their affection, they will leave. If they lose all their stamina, they may also leave, if they are not the danger. And finally, if a target decides to leave or is knifed, they are no longer able to be romanced. And again, like always, the draw code for a simple interface is a nightmare on the eyes. This is basically what it takes to create a basic interface for 4 portraits, a few health bars to represent each target's attributes, and a menu of 5 buttons. All this code to create something that purposely looks like something from the 90s. Now, before I go any further, I should note that these 4 faces you see are not real people. They are randomly generated using some algorithms. And also, if you're wondering, the generator spat out 4 female/feminine looking faces. It was not by choice, and in fact, the generator actually spat out 5 female faces in a row. I decided against using one because their expression was a little intense. Anyway, the end results I think were pretty solid. The point of the game is to romance a target, obviously, and if this were an expanded concept, once the player was successful, a new batch of targets would be brought in and the player would reap some type of benefits from each success. And the game theoretically goes on until they're not so lucky. And while currently extremely unbalanced, the concept is still pretty intriguing. For example, one thing I didn't cover is that the danger actually reacts to the player's actions. However, the danger is also set up in a way as to not always give things away, and will actively attempt to throw the player off. I mean, if it wasn't obvious by now, this concept was extremely silly and meant to be a one-off, but if I'm being honest, I actually kinda like the idea. And with enough tweaks and additions, I think this could actually be something. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this has been done before or if there's even an audience for this type of game, but a roguelike romance with like life or not alive elements? This could very well be something if I develop it further. But for now, this was where I stopped because there's honestly a lot of rewriting that would need to be done if I continued. Which brings us to the end of this episode of Dev Diary. So if you enjoyed today's entry, consider leaving a like. Be sure to also subscribe and hit that bell if you haven't already. And let me know if you'd like to see this project continue. Also be sure to leave any other thoughts and opinions in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.